readers,
reviewers,
countrymen,
lend us your ears. And a huge thank you to all of our Patreons.
Thank you to the Pit Fighters, the First Swords, and all of the Bright Stars. Truth and courage.
Hello and welcome back to for the very first time to the channel. I am Will, this is my brother Ed, and together we make the Brothers Gwyn. And today we're going to be doing one of our monthly summaries talking about our June reads. So yes, what books did we read throughout the month of June? I read 7 books, but I did talk about one of them in my May wrap up because there's like 15 pages of it left. So I'll only be talking about 6 of them today. And I read 2,443 pages in June. So quite a few books, but quite a few of them were short. So less pages than I expected.
And I read 3 books. Not the best of months for me. It's been a crazy one. But yeah, I read 3 books and it was 1,796 pages.
There we go. And so shall we get straight on into talking about the books, Ed?
I think down to business.
Let's get down to business. Sorry to steal Alan's opening. We can't do that, Ed.
No,
copyrighted.
I'm magpieing it.
Copyrighted. Okay, you'll give it back at some point. Alright, first up I have Guards. This was the Patreon pick because every other month our patrons get to pick one of the books that we read that month. They do a vote from a few options and then the winning book is one that we read the following month. And so yeah, Guards won, and that was for me to read, and I read it and it was great. I was really looking forward to it after reading Mort by Terry Pratchett, and Mort is the first Discworld book I'd read. And so yeah, Guards is often kind of praised as the highlight of Discworld, one that's very accessible for people to just dive straight into, and yeah, a lot of fun. And yeah, it really was. It did deliver. I think I actually preferred Mort because kind of the philosophical edge, talking about obviously with death as a major character, but both of these are so funny. I love the kind of satirical nature how it has all the fancy tropes, but it does it in a way where it's satirizing them but still using them as the major plot points, like the king who went missing and stuff like that. And it's just so good. And yeah, so Guards, great read. Thank you to the patrons who voted for me to read this. You have done me a favour.
And I'm going to steal one of your favourite phrases by saying I need to read that. I do need to read that.
That is my motto.
The first one I read of the month was The Prophet of Edam. This is by the Philip Chase. This is the year of Philip Chase.
It is the year of
And
Philip.
this is book 2 of the Edam trilogy. And I've got to say, I love book 1. I absolutely adored book 2. Book 2 takes everything that was amazing about book 1 and just amplified it to just a whole new level for me. I think the prose was more direct, had more purpose, and it was a far quicker book than its predecessor. I think the setup from book 1 really lended so much into book 2 that everything was established. You could just get on with it straight away, and it was just paced absolutely perfectly. The characters all have fantastic arcs. There are new POVs that are mentioned that we see, well, their perspectives, and that was really interesting. And obviously it's a Philip Chase book, so they're not only good, sometimes they are the opposite side of the
spectrum.
Yes, the morality compass. So yeah, I really enjoyed how all of these players had, different roles to play, and I think, well, really for me, I really saw how epic the world was. We go and see far more different areas of the map. Many different factions as well within the Prophet of Edam, and I just absolutely love the arc. I think for Day Raven, for me in book 1 of the Way of Edam, was probably the weakest character out of all of them. Not to say that he was weak, but I think he was the weakest. It usually is with that kind of trope, isn't it? But book 2, he really comes into his own. He is one of my favourites in book 2, so that is absolutely fantastic. There's a character called Search. There are kind of these Viking age tribes, which I absolutely love to read about. Philip Chase shares lots of the same inspirations as the Gwyns do in our kind of formative reading, really, our canon, if you will. So yeah, I absolutely love reading The Prophet of Edam. If you enjoy book 1, you will love book 2. If you didn't enjoy book 1, then you'll love book 2. So definitely go and read it. It's a win-win. And yeah, it's fantastic for me, and I absolutely loved it.
And The Prophet of Edam is on my TBR for July, so I'm really looking forward to getting to that. And it's sacrilege that I haven't already. But next up, I have The Road to Rome by Ben Kane. This was book 3 in the final instalment of the Forgotten Legion trilogy. And possibly the best instalment. So yeah, I was very happy. Another great ending to a series this year. I finished quite a few series now, and so yeah, The Road to Rome was fantastic. I love how kind of these plots and the points that we've been building towards for the whole trilogy, because there are certain motivations and desires that they're in place. So the objectives are there in book 1, and they get there in book 3, or they get so close yet so far in book 3. And it's tragic, but with a lot of humour at times as well. He's very good at crafting kind of that idea and atmosphere of camaraderie. Ben Kane is very good at doing that. He did it in his Lionheart trilogy that I read as well. And yeah, he delivered again with The Road to Rome. And yeah, he's now firmly established himself as one of my favourite historical fiction authors. I've read 6 books by him, and all of them have been really satisfying reads. And I'll probably be reading his new release, Napoleon Spy.
Yeah, I'm interested. Maybe we could do a buddy read of that. That'd be cool. I'm definitely interested in reading that. And I heard the main character is a bit of an anti-hero, which is interesting. Oh. And yeah, I'm definitely up for that. You do another one, Will, because you read more than me.
Next up, I have True Grit. So yeah, Jen, one of our patrons, will be very happy. I finally did it. I read True Grit for so long now, possibly almost as long as a year. I've been saying I need to read True Grit.
Since you were born, actually, you've been telling us you're going to read True Grit.
Well, I said that I need to get into my Western phase, and that has to begin with True Grit. I love the 2 film adaptations. Yeah, I know, I should be wearing it. But yeah, finally done it. Finally read True Grit, and it was incredible. It really lived up to my expectations. Really fantastic core cast of characters. Mattie Ross, she is one of the best leading characters of all time, in my opinion. And yeah, I love kind of the dialogue in particular is just exceptional. It's really just brilliant writing craft at the forefront on show here. And yeah, I think a lot of aspiring writers could learn a lot through reading True Grit, even if they don't want to write a Western themselves. Yeah, it really does have that.
It has a way of crafting voice and character all in one, and having the dialogue equally as funny as it is impactful.
Yeah, I really agree. And yeah, True Grit, absolutely brilliant read. So happy I read it. And yeah, thanks Jen for pushing me to pick it up in June.
The next one for me is a book that both Will and I read, and that we will be doing a review of it on the channel in the upcoming weeks. But it is The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. Thank you, Will, if you want to hold it up for me and model it. But this book is it's a new release by Alexander Darwin. I believe it was a self-published book. I remember seeing it in SBFBO, Mark Lawrence's self-published competition, a few years ago, really, and it was always on my radar. We practice Shotokan karate, so we enjoy martial arts, and this book is written by Alexander Darwin, who is a BJJ practitioner and teacher as well, and that was really cool. Immediately when I learned that, I thought, okay, this author might have something different to bring to the fantasy genre. And here, this is definitely a book that probably only Alexander Darwin could write, really. Yeah. It is a book that essentially all of the problems of different factions can be boiled down, instead of to these epic conquests and fights and battles, they are solved by a 1v1 duel in hand-to-hand combat, much as like a UFC fight or something like that, really. So yeah, I absolutely love reading about that. It's a fantastic premise. I think the characters were awesome. You've got this the teacher and the pupil kind of trope going on, really, which I absolutely love. Growing up on the Karate Kid,
it's a very different take on that, isn't it?
But it was a very different take on that. So Alexander Darwin took a trope that we see in many films. I haven't really seen it too much in books, really, in terms of training specifically for
teacher.
Yeah, exactly. So but I really enjoyed it. I think Alexander Darwin has a great kind of a grasp of dialogue, as well as the concept. His action was his strength by far. And sometimes when people practice a martial art and when they write about it, it is far too in depth for people to really actually see it in their minds. It felt very cinematic when Alexander Darwin was writing, and I felt like I could literally see all of the different moves, everything happening, the action, as well as all of the other parts of the book. So I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend it to people who want a fast-paced fantasy that is focusing on characters. There are a few plot twists at the end, and I have a sense that book 2 is going to be far more epic. And the machinations were also really interesting, so I found that it's a great book, but we will be doing a proper review in the upcoming weeks.
Training school, tick. Immersive action, tick. Interesting mysteries to the world, tick. Great cast of characters, tick. So what more could you ask for? 5 stars from me. And yeah, the Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin was brilliant, and Ed's covered basically everything else, I have to say.
Checklist, tick.
Got it all off. Oh, me next. Next up, I have Underlord, book 6 of the Cradle series by Will White. Much as I've been talking about every month this year, I've actually been keeping to this goal of reading one instalment a month. And so, yeah, I was a bit not disappointed, just book 5 dipped a bit below the kind of the quality that was being really kind of consistent throughout the series. And so, yeah, Ghostwater is book 5. But then book 6, Underlord, has returned to form. And yes, I really enjoyed it and really enjoyed kind of the character arcs. A lot of our characters are reunited and put into kind of circumstances where they have to work together again. And it's that camaraderie and those dynamics that are the strong point of this series. And so, yeah, really enjoyed it. Underlord, great. And I'm looking forward to carrying on with the series.
Very nice. And the last book of the month for me was Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. I was absolutely buzzing to get to this book. It is the part of the second trilogy really of Red Rising. I've reread the Red Rising trilogy this year in anticipation for Lightbringer coming out. When is Lightbringer coming out, by the way?
It's already
is it already out?
No, in a few weeks.
It's in a few weeks. It is July, isn't it? Or
it is July,
yes, end of the July, I believe. So yeah,
I think my review said July.
I was really, really excited to get to Iron Gold. It's been on my radar for a long time, obviously, as I'm a Red Rising fanboy. And I've got to say, I was quite disappointed with it, actually. It goes from, obviously, Darrow as the central POV, the only POV of the Red Rising trilogy, but then Iron Gold is taken into a far wider scope with many different POVs. And it does make the world, it makes the world feel like a completely different universe, really. The Red Rising universe feels like nothing we've read in the previous trilogy. It feels like almost like a departure, really. Lots have changed, so I enjoyed seeing how things have changed from the end of Morningstar, and especially with the main characters as well.
And the consequences.
Exactly. But it is 10 years in the future, so it's more than consequences. A lot has happened, obviously. But yeah, I think the one thing that let it down was the way every time we had to leave characters that we already knew behind and go to new POVs, I just felt like their voices were nowhere near as strong. They were all first person, which was a bit of adjusting at first, really. Obviously, we're used to first person with Darrow in the first trilogy. But when you're doing first person with different POVs, that is a very bold choice. And I did enjoy that in the end, actually. But I think just the voices were nowhere near as strong, nowhere near as likeable. I know it's a very grim world, and it's quite a dark book. But yeah, and I listened to it on Audible as well, and the narrators were not great.
Is it not the... Oh, is it multiple narrators?
Multiple narrators. So each POV has a different... Yeah. So each POV has a different narrator. So that was interesting, but yeah, I wasn't blown away. And I think the story for me felt really, really slow, as opposed to with a Red Rising book, you have these expectations before you go in. Maybe the book was hindered by my expectations, but at the same time, I just don't think it grabbed me very well. Hopefully it grabs you, Will, more than it did for me. I would definitely read Dark Age. I've heard Dark Age is quite an intense book. But yeah, it felt a little bit at times like a slog. At times I enjoy being back with our characters who we knew and loved. I think one thing that Red Rising had was that you had this cast of characters that you really got behind.
Yeah.
Everyone had their own... it didn't feel shallow, really, to me. I think Red Rising, as the first trilogy goes, feels like a book that everyone has their own ideas, everyone has their own, morals, and everyone sticks to them. And, well, for the most part, anyway, there are lots of betrayals.
Well, yeah, but they stick their own loyal.
Exactly, yeah. So you find a way to get behind them. And it's a little bit like Joe Abercrombie's works. Lots of the characters aren't very likeable, but you tend to get behind them either way. And Pierce Brown is that kind of writer. But with this multi-POV approach, it just didn't land for me.
That is a shame, Ed. That is a shame that it was quite conflicted. But at least there were parts he still enjoyed, and hopefully that picks up with Dark Age.
I'll drink to that.
You'll drink to that. Next up, I have another Western, and that is Shane. And yeah, this is another Western film that I loved when I was younger. And so yeah, I've read the adaptation. Well, I still love it, but I loved watching it when I was younger. I've only watched it once. But it's also in Logan. You see Professor X and Logan while he walks in whilst he's watching it.
Spoiler.
Oh yeah, spoiler. He watches a film called Shane in it. But yeah, this is a really great kind of take on the trope of kind of the mysterious stranger with a hidden past. But it's done absolutely brilliantly. I loved it. I thought Shane was incredible. I've done a review actually on the channel. Little short review. So if you're interested, go check that out. And yeah, I thought it was great. Really told from the perspective of a boy, utilises so many different elements that it's very clever to have it from that kind of innocent perspective, but also using retrospection because it is a chronicler's tale. This man is telling the story of kind of what he witnessed as a child, and Shane is the mysterious stranger, so it's named after him. He is kind of the catalyst for these events that occur, or may be not all the events, but he's the catalyst for how they transpire. And so yeah, he's very integral to the story, and I love his characterization and how it develops, and the relationships with Shane and then the boy Jack, and then Jack's parents as well. The four of them together, absolutely brilliant dynamic, and I love how their relationship kind of evolves over time, especially when they find out more about each other. And so yeah, really brilliantly done, and another Western with fantastic dialogue and fantastic characterization.
It's really interesting because the two factions in the conflict are the land barons, who were saying they were there first, which obviously they weren't, and also you got the new settlers, and the conflicts between them. They're both saying that they have a right to the land, and it's really interesting how that plays out, and it feels almost a bit tongue-in-cheek at times, really, but maybe I don't know if it is, but that's how I felt it when I read it. But it's a great book, Shane. If you want to read a short Western that sweeps you off your feet, then go and read that one. And that's all for me. I believe that's all three books that I read. And there we go. That is our monthly wrap-up. Let's get into our book of the month then. And we will...
Okay.
Have you thought about it?
I hadn't, but...
I will start then while you think. And my book of the month is The Prophet of Edam by Philip Chase. None other than this one. There was so many amazing sequences here. I loved all of the characters' arcs. Every single one of them felt so satisfying, and it felt like book 2 was going to be whoa. It had these wow moments at the end of this book that it peaked at the perfect point. There was camaraderie, there was heartbreak and heartache, there were tears, there were triumphs, and there was so much good in this book, and I absolutely loved it, and I'm absolutely buzzing for book 3. Don't know if you guys have heard of him, but Philip Chase, he's a booktuber and he's a great guy.
Dr. Fantasy himself. And this is hard. It was between Combat Codes or True Grit for me, and I had to go True Grit. It's incredible. It is kind of stand out, and I know it's going to be one that kind of improves with time, and I'm definitely going to be rereading it a lot. And it's quite short as well, so yeah, won't be too much of a commitment. Kind of just think, you know what, I need to read True Grit again.
It's a masterpiece. It's a book that, you know, when you read, as soon as you read the first page, you realise it is a masterpiece. I don't know if Charles Portis has actually written any other books. I've never really
He has. I think one other one was quite successful, Dog of the South, but the others aren't very well known.
Yeah, so we'll have to check out the other ones if you want some under the radar books, really. But yeah, thank you so much for watching our monthly wrap up of June. Wasn't the best month for reading for either of us, really, was it? But at least we're reading, so it is what it is at the end of the day. We love to read, and these were some fantastic books. And if you just read one book a month, then you still read 12 books in the year, and you still get all of that joy.
It's all about the enjoyment.
Exactly, and I absolutely love Prophet
Quality over quantity.
I love the combat codes, so there we go. I've got 2 new books to add to my favourites lists. So thank you very much, everyone. Truth and courage. Stay safe.
The Brothers Gwyn.
From the Brothers Gwyn.